Buckle up, sweethearts. This week is wild, and this episode is going to be long because it feels like everything happens this week. Hello and welcome. This is the Astrology of the Week Ahead podcast. I'm your host, Chani Nicholas, and we are talking about the week of July 15th. So by the time you're listening to this, the astrology is already, happening because we're talking about something that happens on July 15th, which is Monday. So it's no surprise. I don't know what's going on because I'm taping this in the past, but you will definitely know what's going on. And all I know is that the astrology signature that's happening on Monday is loud and it's disruptive and it's about changing something that is outdated, or it is about something feeling very explosive and a little like a red flag. It's one of those moments where we want to be, in a sense, cautious. Like maybe not personally, but I'm cautious about this time when I look at it. Mars is a planet that is related to swords. And Uranus is a planet that is about disruption or shock or something coming from out of the blue. And it tends to be bumpy. And so if I know I'm going through some major turbulence, I don't want to just be like, wielding my swords around. I want to make sure they're secure and safely put in whatever it is you put them in. You get the idea. I don't want the bumpiness if I'm holding sharp objects. But that's what today is, or that's what the 15th is. That's the astrology anyways. Now, you can tell me, and future me self can tell me how it all rolls out. But it does feel like, okay, if we don't want to get hurt, if you don't want to hurt anybody, then be a little extra considerate, cautious, careful, maybe the word to use. If you don't want to cause harm, then think about how we can de-escalate harm is another way we might think about this. And we might also very much need this energy to help us break free of something that is already harmful, of whatever is traditionally in place, systems, structures, states, etc., that are already functioning in a way that is excessively, extremely violent. And then how do we disrupt those systems, those like calcified old ways of doing things that are, again, inherently oppressive, supremacist, or violent? Does this astrology point to a moment where something gets interrupted about what's already harmful? That's another way it can land. And that's how I look at working with this in terms of a collective kind of signature. And then there's your personal life. And maybe the two things intersect, maybe they don't. Personally, this is a good time to have a breakthrough. Personally, we might do something in our life just because we are feeling the need for change. And personally, I would say, don't change things just because you're bored or because you feel the need for change. Change things because it's the right thing to do. Change things because it's time and you feel exhilarated by the change. You feel like, and in your being that this is the risk that you need to take, that this is the thing that you want to be a part of. This is the change you want to make happen in your personal life and also in the world. And so it is astrology that feels very activist-ish, if that's a word I can use, in its manifestation. So I'll also be watching what it is that's coalescing in the collective and what direction that's moving people in. And it could have also something to do with technology. Uranus quite often has to do with technology. And so it could be something just disruptive in the tech space as well. The other big thing about this week is that Mars, still Mars, until Saturday, until it moves into Gemini, it's still got that reverb from the Uranus conjunction. So we're going to be feeling this all week, or seeing it happen all week, watching it unfold all week. And then Mars moves into Gemini, which is a big deal because as soon as it moves into Gemini, it goes from being in a whole sign or an exact conjunction with Uranus, which is a big deal, to being in a whole sign to soon to be exact square with Saturn and conjunction with Jupiter. Now, the last time Mars was in Gemini was when it was retrograde, which was the later part of 2022, the last couple of months of 2022 and the first little bit of 2023. And if you remember, some person bought Twitter and the whole thing melted down. That's the last time Mars was in Gemini. So Mars is the planet of heat and furious, whatever it does. And in Gemini, that's typing, that's speaking, that's language, that's communications. So as soon as Mars moves in to Gemini on Saturday the 20th, I'm assuming communications are just going to be dialed all the way up, and all things that can go awry with the ways in which we communicate, mostly online, is going to get wild. I think that like the circus is in town, there's clowns everywhere kind of vibe. And then also, eventually in August, Mars will meet up with Jupiter, and Jupiter just blows up whatever it touches. It magnifies, makes bigger in a lot of ways. It's going to meet up with Jupiter, and both of them are going to square Saturn. And a Mars-Saturn square is one of the tougher things that we can go through. And so we always want to look to those moments to say, oh, what is difficult that's being parsed through here? And so if it's difficult and it's about having a conversation, if it's about speaking, if it's about anything to do with that, then what's happening mid-August that might bring about some difficult conversations? Or what's happening mid-August that is very important and even consequential, perhaps? What are we all going to be talking about? And we're going to need to have some very difficult conversations. And again, we're going to also need to be very wary of disinformation, which that's all the time. That's 24/7 living in this day and age. But it does look like, from an astrological point of view, that all gets really ramped up and maybe even out of control, and maybe even to the point where it helps to curb it. It is all being squared by Saturn. Who knows? We'll have to live into August. But I just want to say, like, the part of our chart that contains Gemini now on a personal level is getting a lot of heat and a lot of energy. And there's just a lot going on there because Jupiter and Mars together is a lot of Mars energy. It's a kind of super powered Jupiter energy, we could say, too. So it might, Jupiter will help to bring about some kind of good outcome. It always does. But because it's in a mutable sign, because Gemini is what we call a double-bodied or mutable sign, there's always going to be a mixed quality to everything that happens. So there's no like one note or one direction here. It's always going to be a mixed scenario. So this is where it gets weird. This is where it gets wild. And again, into August is where that's where we're going. This is like Mars is just going to zoom now into that stop sign of Saturn. So what I have said last year when I did your year ahead readings, and in the last couple of readings for you in the app, in the Chani app for your personal readings, I talk a lot about how I don't want us to overwhelm ourselves in August, which, most people are like summer vacation in the Northern Hemisphere. And also, like it's a time where it doesn't feel like it's maybe like overly condensed in terms of our lives, but it does seem like space lessens. Like there's less time than we think. There's less room than we think. There's less energy than we think. There's less of whatever it is we were counting on than we think. And it's a really important time to be excessively economical and discerning, especially with our speech, especially with our commitments, especially with our options. Again, I've been saying that for a long time, but I just want to reiterate it here and now. Okay, I've skipped over a couple things, but those are the two top things that are happening until we get to Sunday. And then Sunday's a full moon in Capricorn. There's also a whole bunch of other things that are happening on Sunday. They're mostly connected to the full moon. And I just want to pause for a moment and say, as soon as Mars moves into Gemini, it does one really good thing, which is, and it'll do other, it's not bad, quote unquote, but as soon as it moves into Gemini, it makes a trine with Pluto, which is actually quite empowering, and it's quite deep, and it's helps us to be determined, and it helps us to be a little bit more focused than Mars and Gemini would normally be. So I do think that this very beginning opening sequence, if you will, this opening scene is actually really helpful. It feels like we're like, okay, let's get into it. Let's focus, and let's win at this thing that we're doing. And so that's happening at the same time as the full moon on Sunday. Now, the full moon on Sunday is happening at the nth degree of Capricorn. It's the second full moon in a row in Capricorn. So the part of your chart that contains Capricorn is getting like this double connection with the full moon. It's getting double magnification. It's getting double spotlight. It's getting double the energy. So this full moon is sitting right next to Pluto. They're together. Now, Pluto is a planet of depth and transformation and alchemy. And this full moon is happening at the edge of Capricorn. And so it's really going to highlight the part of your chart that has Capricorn and Aquarius in it. It's going to be like a both and situation. But because we already had that first full moon in Capricorn, there's a doubling up there. And then also it's like straddling this line. And because it's happening at the end of Capricorn, and it's happening with a planet that is about endings and the underworld, and because it's a full moon, so it's the fulfillment of something, it does seem like this weekend is quite jam-packed with opportunities to do some of that transformative alchemical digesting or composting, we might say. I always use the word composting for Pluto because it is about the underworld and what happens under there. And so there's a lot of riches in the underworld. There's a lot that, gestates in the underworld. And the underworld is often a harrowing journey of transformation. And so we can think of it as like a natural alchemical composting type of experience. And that looks like what the weekend is about. I'm not saying you won't have fun. I'm not saying you won't go out. I'm not saying you won't, do your thing and have a good time and go to the parties and the farmers markets and the brunches and all that stuff. I'm not saying it won't be good. I don't want us to fear anything. I just think that on a level of our lives, we're going to feel like we've been a little turned over and like we're composting something. And that can be in the backdrop, that can be in regards to something that's happening in our lives in some, other realm than what's happening right up front. But there is something here about going deep. And it's the moon and it's a full moon. So, we get weepy, we get emotional, we get something on a full moon. It usually brings up a lot, even if it's just exhaustion or even if it's just like some idea that we had been having but hasn't really gotten to the surface, or because it has Pluto, and we've been talking a lot about Pluto and we will again, it's like whatever's been subterraneanly held down gets now revealed. The moon is spotlighting. It's like a spotlight into the underworld. So also on a collective level, because that's what we want to talk about in this podcast, we talk about the personal stuff in your readings for the week. On a collective level, What kind of underworld, nefarious fill in the blank is being spotlit right now? There's tons of it. There's no, shortage of it. But is something coming up that you're like, oh, well, that's not ethical. That's not legal. That's not morally, whatever. Is that what this full moon is also bringing about? And remember, we're just coming off of the Uranus-Mars conjunction, and then Mars changes signs, and then the full moon happens. And it's a week of disruption and alchemy and revealing, and Pluto's quite shadowy, so the stuff that happens next to Pluto or with Pluto in the mix, we know that we're going to get into those realms of what needs to get uncovered, what has been relegated to the shadows, what feels really urgent to go into and investigate. It's good investigative energy. Thank you all so much for leaving us reviews in the App Store. It means so much to us. It impacts us greatly as a company and also just as individuals all working on this thing that we love. And we are so glad that you love it. I wanted to leave you with this one. It's called My Most Trusted Spiritual Guide. I've always been casually interested in astrology, but Chani took me from curious to convert. I've been using the free version of the app for a while and thoroughly enjoying it. But the readings around the most recent eclipse, March 2024, absolutely blew me away. Multiple things happened in my life on eclipse day that perfectly aligned with Chani's assessment of what the eclipse would do in our lives in a truly incredible way. I upgraded to premium that same day and haven't looked back. This app is an amazing guidebook to living your life in tune with the energy of the universe. All right, y'all. Then we go into Leo season. We move into Leo season next week. So the sun is going to also make an opposition to the Pluto. Let's talk about it. Come back. We'll talk all about Leo season. Leo season is going to be wild because it'll bring us through the Mars-Jupiter conjunction square Saturn. We'll talk about it. We're all going to get through it. I want us to plan for it, right? I want us to think about Leo season as a time to not overwhelm our system. We are going to refuse to build our life around burnout. We know that success is not burnout. Burnout is not success. We're not going to do it. Not this August, not this Leo season. All right, y'all. Sending you so much love. Many, many, many blessings. Remember, this week it's like, how do we install some shock absorption into our life? How do we help ourselves to alchemize the things that might be a little bit more challenging to withstand or hold or feel? It's okay. We're spacious. We can remember that we don't have to have all the answers. We don't have to know everything. We don't have to make up our minds right this moment, but we do have to sit with things that come up and be the cauldron to make the eventual magic potion out of whatever it is that life is serving up. Take excellent care of yourselves. Full moon in Capricorn is always an invitation to be like, how am I tending to my body? How am I tending to my vessel? How am I helping my body alchemize whatever it is I take in each and every day? Okay, I'll see you back here next week. Bye for now.